Welcome, friends, to Everyday Insights, where I catch up with valued colleagues and share their life learnings so we can all learn to live a little happier. Today's guest is Jeff Chen, a product manager for Google who works on their amazing next-gen 3D video chat solution called Project Starline. We won't talk about it here, but I put a link in the description to an article on The Verge if you want to learn more about it. Jeff and I met creating products together at Intel Digital Health. And from there, he went on to work on VR at Google, at Facebook on the Facebook portal, and now he's back at Google again. But what I find more interesting than his successful career in technology is how at 16 he developed an extraordinary sense of responsibility to raise himself and his family while his parents had to leave the country. And now, while excelling in his career, he's also had the presence of mind to understand that he'd rather leave a legacy of being a great dad than just being a great resume, and has allocated his time and energy appropriately. If you enjoyed this content, please leave a comment letting me know which part was most interesting to you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and with that, let's dive right in. Thank you for joining me today, Jeff. It's great to see you again.
It's good to be here. Good to see you again. It's been a while.
We met back at Intel doing digital health stuff.
Yeah, if I count the number of years, it'll scare me, so I think I'd rather not. But I look back at those days fondly.
I don't know. This last few years of COVID has been an additional time chunk of everything now is oh, that was 3 years ago. It's this is just a big number. Anything that feels normal. Or I also had a kid 3 years ago, so it times well with that. Or it's just a whole different life stage you're in now.
In many ways, you had your kid timed perfectly, because when you have a young child at home, you're not going anywhere. At least certainly I didn't when we had ours.
Yeah.
And I look back on it and I think of it actually as almost like a blessing, because you had more time at home. And my kids were at that point where the younger one was 2 and the older one was 4. So it was at that turning point where they're starting to develop their personalities and character.
Yeah.
So I appreciated having more opportunities to be at home, to be with them. And so while everything else went on a pause, but in that respect, it was kind of nice being there for my kids.
Yeah, I think it could have some really positive impacts that way. Or if we get to have another kid, I'm not sure how we'll have that same time with them that we had, the 2 year through 3 years at home, that he was at home. We had a nanny for that time. Yeah, it was really great to be able to just spend every day with him, go play with him different times. And meanwhile, we're downstairs working, but we're really close. He noticed we were downstairs, he noticed we were away, but not really, right? You'd be up there for lunch and all different stuff. So yeah, how did you guys handle that at that slightly older age? How did you handle them being in school or not?
When COVID happened, the first 6 months were kind of rough, but we figured out how to make it work. So between my wife and myself, we're both working full time. And what we would do is we'd just tag team and take shifts. So we'd do 2-hour blocks where I would take care of both of the kids for 2 hours. And right around 2 hours is that critical threshold when you start getting a little frustrated and you're starting to feel like a horrible parent, because you're still trying to keep up with messages that are coming back and forth. And then so after the 2 hours are done, then we would swap out. So at the beginning of every week, my wife and I, we would sit down and then just go through our schedules and figure out what chunks of the day could we try to block out for, where we could be on call to take care of the kids. And it worked out. We were able to survive. We were, I think, better parents in that we weren't as frustrated, because we felt it was a good time away from the kids. And after 2 hours coming back, you feel a little fresh to be able to take it on. But I also feel very privileged that our employers were also understanding of how everyone's trying to go through this and take care of it. And it was only after we felt comfortable enough that the worst had gone over that we thought, okay, we're going to hire some help. Also, I think the kids needed a little bit more socialization to someone other than their parents. So we were fortunate to find a nanny that could be here for 4 days out of the week.
Yeah.
And eventually we sent him back to preschool, I think after 6 months. And it took a little bit of convincing for us to feel comfortable, but the school had figured it out, a decent process to screen, to keep people safe. And it turned out to be the right call, because I think kids really need to be socialized with society rather than just their parents.
Yeah. It's tough for us to make that decision now too. Our son's been in the preschool now for daycare basically for 6 months, and it's been good. He's very happy there. At first, he struggled with getting used to it and leaving us, and he was very upset when he'd leave. But then he'd be fine once he was in there. Just like every kid, like has a month or something that they revolt. And now he's happy to go, and he doesn't seem to have a problem with it.
Good,
which is fun. It still feels tough though sometimes of like leaving him there, or it's a long day if I'm leaving him there 9 to 5. It's a lot of time away. Like preschool is only half a day almost,
right?
For a lot of them, because that's coming from a different time, and it's like, is this too long? Am I leaving him there too long? Or do you ever worry about that stuff?
I do, and I have before in the past, but I think I look at it as in the past, ever since my oldest son was in preschool, he had always started his day at like 8:45, gone all the way to 5:45. So it's a full day. And I think that I was only consoled by the fact that a lot of other families are dealing with the same constraints. So if he was the last soul in the school when I went and picked him up, I would feel very differently.
Yeah.
And so we were comfortable because all these other parents are doing it. So I think it was kind of like a reinforcing thing. And I also recognize that the teachers, the preschool, they were just good at keeping them stimulated and have lots of opportunities to play around and do different things. Whereas if I brought them home, like I have to be honest with myself, I'm not a very creative person to give them all these stimulating activities.
You're really trying to do something else all the time too.
Yeah.
Right? You're trying to work, you got your own priorities, you're trying to you can only do a few little things each day to
exactly
give them something new.
I felt like I was a better parent when I had more patience and more enthusiasm for doing the things that they're doing, right? And I couldn't be fully present for my children if I was thinking about the documents I've got to work on or the messages I have to respond to keep work going. So I thought to myself, like, be present when you need to, and when they are away, focus on the things, get done, be very super productive and efficient. And once they're back home, then focus on them and just make sure that the quality of that time spent is there.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone said a nice thing to me like that too. And I was worried about this. How much time do you spend? They said how research shows an hour or two of good quality time is more valuable than if you just sat them in front of the iPad all day and you were with them all day, but they're just,
right.
Yeah.
And
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Feels good. So I try to do that is when he comes home, attempt to forget about the pressures of whatever else I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Not easy to do, but we try.
We've talked for a bit here, but we didn't do the kind of elevator pitch for who Jeff is, or tell my viewers a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to lately.
I think if you asked me at different stages of my life, I would have said different things. But right now I see myself as a proud father of 2 boys, 7 and 5-year-old. And everything around my life is about trying to be there for them, trying to help them become better human beings. And 10 years ago, I would have been super career minded, right? And I would have defined myself and my identity as, I'm a product manager at these large tech companies. And I'm just all about trying to build great platforms that will scale and impact billions of people and maybe make a small impact in the world, right? But the more that I've seen my kids grow, the more that I've found myself wanting to be more of a well-rounded human being that's there as a father, that's there as a husband, that's there as a community member who's thinking about how do you create a better world for these children to inherit and actually take over one day when we're all feeble-minded. So I think that's how I'd quickly describe myself.
That's really nice. I like that a lot. And I think it encapsulates some of the real world things that have happened both in your life and to all of us, or, as we go through these life stages, that not everyone's aware of. And doing these interviews or talking to different people, I don't see them feeling that shift in their perspective all the time. What's precipitated that in you? What's made you really change your mindset that I'm a dad, not a product manager?
Well, there's a joke where as a product manager, we're always thinking about what are the problems that exist and then how do you solve them? And then who the user is, who's your customer? And then I always think about my children are my ultimate product, right? Like my wife and I, we got together, we put these two human beings out in the world, and they're completely blank canvas, right? And it's really up to us to shape them into the types of people that we want them to be. And we can choose to have them to be very responsible, outstanding, very effective, or highly motivated, contribute to society, or, it can be anything else in between, right? And to me, I think it became clear to me that this was really important as soon as I started seeing that my children were trying to interact with people, were trying to make decisions about how their actions would affect themselves, the people around them. And I thought to myself that I have been in a position of extraordinary privilege with people around me when I grew up, and I didn't even recognize that as a child.
Mm.
And I took it for granted. But when that old expression of it takes a village to raise a child, it very much is true. And I think I've internalized that more, and I've been much more grateful as I look back on it. And I think about how I would like to be there for my kids. I'll take a slight tangent and I'll explain why I think that's important, is because when I grew up, my parents were there when I was a young child, but as I got older and going into high school, in my formative years of turning into a person, my parents weren't around anymore. They sent us over to the United States when I was in high school because they wanted us to have a better education than the Taiwanese education system. And my mom had initially wanted to come out and join us and stay with us while we were in Seattle to go through high school. But she fell ill, and we didn't have health insurance in the US to be able to cover for that need. So she ended up having to go back to Taiwan, where my dad was working and where there was national health care. And so it was just my younger brother and myself staying in Seattle by ourselves. And we had to figure a lot of stuff out. Like, there was no coaching. There was no frequent check-ins from our parents, just because back in the day it was before internet, FaceTime, and these really convenient ways. So our parents really just had to entrust that we would just figure things out. And I think the optimistic way of looking at it was that my mom had felt like she had built that solid foundation of character, of knowing that there's like a sense of moral conduct or some code of conduct or some like set of principles that she felt confident that my brother and myself would be able to guide ourselves to do the right thing. Or the pessimistic way is like she had no choice. She just had to go and she had to leave us, and we just had to figure it out. And fortunately, we had a good head on our shoulders, and we decided to do the right thing to help get us through school, land it into good colleges, and so on. And so through that experience, I look back and thinking like, I really need to make sure that my own children are being presented with ample opportunities to learn about what it is to be like a decent and good human being, a curious human being, a hardworking one, someone who knows how to like respect, work with other people. And I feel like a lot of those character traits are built out really early in life. I recall before I had kids, I remember hearing about a study about the value of preschool on a person's development through life. And I think it was in Oklahoma, where they had state-funded preschools, and they found that these children that had gone through preschool, that had a lot of this like behavioral training, warm environments to help them in structured learning of how to deal with other people, like that all happened at a very early age. And I walked away thinking like, wow, it's like fairly impressionable on people of that young age to set them up for the rest of life. So I always thought that I really need to take advantage of the opportunities for my children when they are young and impressionable to set them up well on a lot of the soft skills to be able to make it through in life. And the older they get, the more hardened they're going to be. And it's going to be harder for me to, or anyone, to really steer them in a new direction. So decided to really invest in that early and not take time for granted.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I wonder how much of that it requires effort versus is who you are. Like, because you are a certain way and you have certain values, that kind of just gets passed on versus you need to set up these exercises or times. I know there's been a ton of research done on that stuff, and we're not going to solve any of it here, but yeah, it's interesting to see your perspective on that, at least, of like, how much do you think they're just picking up?
There is such a thing as luck in life, for sure. I won the lottery for birth, right? A lot of us have, right? There's no denying that there's luck, but I also believe in created luck, or created circumstances that help you be able to like steer in a particular direction to increase the favorability of those odds. So to me, I always feel like for my kids, how can I take every moment to be teachable?
Yeah, that must take a lot of effort. How does it feel to you?
I think it takes more patience, for sure. It takes a lot of patience. Like, it's easy for us as adults to see like a particular behavior or a set of circumstances and react to it. And oftentimes, like, hey, I've done it before where I've kind of lost my temper, or I've just said like, just don't do that. Right. I don't have time to explain everything. Just don't do that.
Yeah.
But I do think that to the extent that we can, we have to kind of take a breath and then figure out, how can I explain the rationale and present this to a child so that they can really reason through it and learn through it. And it's funny because I teach my sons a lot of about empathy, or at least sympathizing with other people. So whenever there's a conflict, I always try to have my sons empathize with the other side, because I want them to feel and internalize, why did the conflict arise? Right. And it's not just a single side of like you versus them, but it's like really understanding where conflicts arise. And it's usually just because it's a difference of perception of what's happening, a difference of needs and wants. And then so I've done this empathy exercise enough times where my dad is like, where my son is like, Dad, I hate it when you tell me to think about the other side. I'm tired. It's like, you always tell me to think about the other side. It's like, no, I just want this. I'm like, nope, take a breath. We have to think about the other side. All right. And then just understand how this came about. The outcome can be the same, right? But I just want you to be wise enough to understand where these come from, and then how you can deal with this in the future, either preventatively or like after the fact, to mitigate it.
Yeah, I think that's a great gift, or it's something that's a lot of investment for you and of your time and energy into them. And I think it should pay off in that nature.
So cross your fingers.
Right? Yeah, in that nature and nurture.
As parents, we're always just crossing your fingers, hoping that we did it right.
Yeah, it's got to matter, right? Otherwise, why are we doing all this? But there must be something to it besides just being around them, that spending the energy will do something. Surely you see short-term rewards in, teaching them things, or you can spend time playing a certain toy with them and then they get better at that toy. It's like, just like that, they must get better at the other things. And when you teach them about empathy, they must learn about empathy and how to make that question happen in their mind naturally in them, totally. In their own self.
When I see my kids interact with other kids, or I just see like my kids just behaving the way that they are right now relative to some of these other kids that are out there through like play dates, I'm just very grateful that my kids seem well mannered. They're polite. They seem like good people. So I feel like it's moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
But who knows? We're still all crossing fingers.
Anything else you want to catch up on, or should we talk about work stuff a little bit?
We can talk about work stuff. That's fine too.
Sure. All right. So one thing I was thinking about of your different careers that maybe you could explain to me and everybody else is most people don't understand what you do, what I do, and what anybody does, right? We kind of, we learn some little piece of it. So I find like learning more about people's jobs very interesting. And we worked together in product marketing for a while, which I kind of understand what that is. But then a lot of your titles now are product manager. So what's the difference in this? What is product management versus product marketing?
The simplest way that I can explain it is that product marketing is about taking an existing product that's already been defined and built, and you're trying to sell it to somebody else. And you're all about articulating the value proposition of it. You're trying to figure out how to price it. You're figuring out how to distribute and get it to your customer, right? So when you and I were working in product marketing, we're always touting the benefits of the product, and we're trying to figure out what audience and how to reach the audience. So product management is about, well, how do you define the right product to sell in the first place?
Mm.
So it's really about breaking it down in simple terms, is understanding a problem that a particular segment or a particular user or person has, and how would you solve that problem? And then you think about, well, how many other people in this world also have a similar problem and would appreciate the solution that you're thinking to solve that problem? And then working with designers and engineers to figure out, well, how can we approach this problem to build that solution? And is that solution going to be effective in solving that problem? And is it going to be accessible enough? When I talk about accessible, I mean in terms of usability, but also about like price points, like the underlying cost of being able to afford that solution to go solve that problem. So in many cases, product marketing and product management are two sides of a common discipline, which is you're trying to get a product that solves a particular problem for a customer out into the hands of the customer. And so that they're happy, that in the process, you're building some form of revenue that funds the development of this product and hopefully gives you more runway to invest in another product that solves a problem yet again for some other segment or even for the same customer.
That's interesting. Yeah, I would have kind of even thought it would be the opposite description of, so reframing what you said a little bit, the manager is more on the design side, kind of setting up what to sell, how to sell, who to sell it to. And then product marketing was more getting it out the door once it's more defined and getting it into people's hands, or how to get it into people's hands.
Yeah, and I think that in many cases, in let's say smaller companies, product marketing and product management, like the titles are somewhat nebulous, but
Be the same thing, maybe. Yeah,
could be the same thing. And in fact, you'll notice that smaller companies cannot afford having like a product marketing org and a product management org, and it's like one and the same thing. So it really comes down to the needs of the individual company and also the culture of the company. So we'll find that in certain companies, product marketing is also very capable of going out, chartering market research and figuring out what the market size is, and then bring some of those higher level market requirements of like willingness to pay, certain geographic markets, and certain things that the market cares about, and brings it into the product manager or just into a core product development team to figure out, hey, this is what we know about our customers. And then how do we translate it into product features and then get translated into like product specifications that an engineer can go build. So product management tends to be a very cross-functional role where they are talking with the product marketers, talking with designers, engineering, and trying to synthesize all of those different inputs into a cohesive product story, and then figuring out the trade-offs that are required to actually build it. Because in many cases, you may have a whole list of problems that you want to go solve, and you may have a whole bunch of options to go solve them, but you can't do everything all at once. And you got to figure out, for the minimum amount of resources that you have, how can you best invest those resources on the most material impact that your customers care about and are willing to pay for it.
Yeah, as I looked across some of your past jobs and stuff too, it seemed like your career has had a big focus on video conferencing and on stuff. Even thinking back to Intel Health Guide days, like that was at its core essence, Intel was making a video conferencing solution for doctors to patients, right? And you'd send data, and then like your weight or your ECG, or not ECG, but your blood pressure and your weight scale might connect up to it, and then you'd answer some questions on it, and you'd maybe have a chat with your healthcare provider through it. And then, fast forward to now, you're working on something at Google that's in that same kind of video conferencing space, not with healthcare, but and then all in between, it's been a little bit related. Do you ever see that path through it, or are you more focused on the product manager aspect of you're doing the same kind of role?
Over time, I've come to appreciate that my unstated personal mission has always been to figure out how to use technology to help people solve problems and use their time in more efficient, delightful ways. Right? That's kind of like the unstated motivation behind what I've chosen to do. But I think that in very concrete terms, I've wanted to figure out how to build products that help connect people with each other, right? They're tools in service of helping you and me have this wonderful, miraculous video conferencing call that could not have been imagined like 50 years ago, at least to this fidelity. But I've always wanted to figure out how can you take like technology pieces to be able to help facilitate communication. And I think the reason why I've wanted to do that is like, hey, my family's spread out across the world. I have a brother in Minnesota. I have my dad in Taiwan. And now that with my kids, they live in the US, I want them to have a family relationship, a very closely knit one that I couldn't do before in the past because I was an immigrant in the US and all the family was scattered across the world as well. And now we have wonderful devices and networks that can help do that together. And so, yes, the technology industry has figured out to do, like at first it was IP calls, like over the internet. So it was free. That's great. And then we introduced video and then a higher resolution video. And then it's about like, what's next after that?
Earlier on, I mentioned that question to you before we went live on accomplishments and what you consider some of the accomplishments of your life. It's just a way to get to know you or know what's important to you.
So the three major accomplishments in life really help define who I am as a person. And they're not going to be professional related because I think in the broad scheme of things, it's all about like, who have we become as people and how did we get here and what sort of impact we make around the communities around us. And so I think the first accomplishment was really about being able to make it through high school on my own and my younger brother in Seattle.
Yeah.
The way that started was I had sent my mom over to the airport in SeaTac so that she would go back to Taiwan. And at the time, I only expected her to be gone for 2 weeks.
Wow. And you were in high school at this point, or how old were you?
In high school, I was a sophomore in high school.
So were you staying with someone then too, or what did you do?
It was just my brother and myself. We were in a house in Bellevue, Washington. I had just gotten my driver's license at the age of 16. And so I was able to drive. But on the night before she was supposed to come back from Taiwan, she calls me up and she says, Jeff, I'm not coming back tomorrow. And I asked,
oh my gosh.
So you coming back the day after?
Next week?
Next week? And she's like, no, I'm not going to go back for a while. I don't know when.
Wow.
And so I was wondering, like, what are you talking about? Like, well, this is not what we had discussed, or like, how is this happening? And I could tell from the tone of her voice, she was just stuck in a really hard place. I knew that my mom had adored us. She loved us. She was always supportive. And for her to do this was not something light. Yeah. It took a lot of strength, a lot of courage for her to say that she's not going to come back to look after her 2 boys. And so I could hear it in her voice. And I knew she didn't arrive at this conclusion very lightly. And she wouldn't get into the details. She just said that she couldn't come back. And that she was really counting on me to look after my younger brother and take care of ourselves, and that we were going to go figure it out. And so that experience was like the beginning of growing into myself as an individual, right? Because all of a sudden I had to think about, how do I prepare for meals? How do I take care of laundry? How do I pay for bills? How do I take care of all the incidental stuff that comes up? Like, for example, I think 3 days before the AP tests on my senior year, I come back home after school, after we've had like track practice, and I see a 15-foot geyser coming out of my front yard. I'm like, what is this? Where is it coming from? Well, it turned out that the water main had burst going into the house because, hey, it was just one of those rare cold spells that happens in the Pacific Northwest, and we didn't have water as a result of that, right? So
and you got to figure out who to call, even get help.
Exactly.
I mean, a lot of steps that wouldn't be easy for me right now.
Yeah. So as an 18-year-old, I'm just like, okay, quickly. I think I remember there's like some shut off valve at the main. So let's go there and figure out how to close it. So found some sort of wrench, stuck my hand in like 3 feet of water and figured out how to shut that off. And then,
oh my gosh.
And then figure out like, okay, well, what's the problem here? I have no idea. So then you got to go call up a plumber to come by and check it out. And we were very tight on like a budget. Like my
Yeah.
dad
Was your
was
mom
very
sending you
clear.
money, or what was,
Yeah, my
how was
parents
that
were
one?
sending us money
Wow.
on a periodic basis, but they're making a Taiwanese salary, which is like 33% of what it is in the US.
Oh
And
my
it's like a
gosh.
single income. So it's not much to work with. And so like I remember the plumber's like, okay, it's gonna cost you $800 to get this fixed. I'm like, I can't afford $800. That eats a lot out of my budget. It's like, how can I cut back on cost? And he's like, you can dig a hole for me. Okay. Because I don't want to dig the hole, and that's a lot of the labor. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, how much are they going to save? He's like, you can I'll knock off like $400 if you dig the hole. And he's like, he didn't tell me how big of a hole to go dig. He's like, I just need enough space. So like I spend a good 2-3 hours out in like
It's good.
39-degree weather.
It's a good pay rate. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Jeez. And then with a shovel, I'm digging like a 3.5-foot deep trench, wide enough. I'm clearing out brush. In any case,
Oh my gosh.
those are examples of like the things I just had to deal with to try
And
to
you
make
just
it
came
work.
back from your AP test, or you were going
I
to
was
it? Or
3 days before my first
okay,
AP
okay. You were
test.
needing to study, or
I needed to
you're trying
study,
to
so
do
I
this
remembered,
regular
being very,
high-powered
very resentful.
school
Like,
stuff.
yeah, I thought to myself, like, all the other competitors of mine, like all the other classmates, they're studying for their AP test. They're probably grabbing a nice cup of hot cocoa, whatever, and don't have to worry about this stuff. But I had to deal with it. And that 3-year period, like just getting into school, I remember the day that I got my acceptance letters from school. And the one that I clearly am most proud of is from Cornell. Go Big Red. And to me, that was a huge moment of relief and also of just celebration because of all the hard work that we put into that in those 3 years to just survive and get through it. Like it paid off. Like that was a clear milestone. We had done it. Like, okay, great. That was what my parents had wanted. All the sacrifices that they made were not done in vain. It was great. So that I think was one of the largest accomplishments.
That's an incredible story. What did your brother do when you went to Cornell too? Did he come with you to get?
He stayed behind, and
He took
so
over for himself. Or he had
he
to do
had to
what you
look
did then.
after himself, and so his own accomplishment of making it through by himself
Yeah.
is not trivial, right? At least like when I was around, it was the two of us and we had each other's back. But the moment I was gone, he felt kind of abandoned, and he never complained about it. But I think that was a huge victory for him too.
Yeah.
And it was not easy for him, I'm sure.
Were you mad at your mom when she left, or later on? You said some idea of resentment a little bit there at one point.
I was not resentful at my mom. I was resentful at the situation. I was resentful that I was just stuck in the situation, but I couldn't fault my mom for it. I knew that she didn't wish this on me. Wasn't like she was taking the time off to go to Taiwan so she could hang out with her friends and just
Yeah.
have a nice socialite type of life. So I always had that perspective of like, this isn't easy on anybody. It just sucks.
Yeah, that's very
But-
strong of you. I mean, I'm sure you could take it many ways. I'm sure they raised you well before that to get you to that point of being able to take over that responsibility and everything. That's incredible.
Yeah. So I think that those sets of experiences through 3 years of just dealing with any trial that comes my way had really taught me to be calm during crises, methodical in problem solving, and then figure out just how do you solve problems with constraints and the budget that you have to work with. Which is kind of ironic because as a product manager, I remember when I first started off as a PM, I would always start with cost constraints first. And then I was coached by Ray Askew, a very fond mutual acquaintance of ours, that as a PM, we are okay to ask for more than what is potentially feasible and then iterate back and forth with your engineers or with your broader team to figure out what is achievable. But don't start with the product definition that's an assumed lower level of scope because you think you have less constraints, or that you're dealing with assumed constraints that you can perhaps relax.
Yeah, people talk about possibility thinking, right? That's one of those breakers of that kind of idea, right? Is put out what you really want and then figure out a way. That everyone works hard to figure out a way to get there.
Yeah. So that's the first major accomplishment. The second accomplishment But I will say that that first accomplishment, I do think that the mentality, the character building of that experience is what has contributed to the way that I operate as a professional in my cross functional teams. So I think it was a very essential thing. Now, when I look back, I see it as normal. I don't see it as abnormal. It's just the thing that we had to do and we did it and we were okay. But I look at the silver lining of like, I'm grateful for the experience, but would I want this for my own kids?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would. I think there are probably other ways for them to learn the things that they need to develop character and endurance and stamina and patience and understanding. But it happened, and that was just my way of getting refined through the fire, right? So, second accomplishment, I think it was really about. Well, personally, it was definitely marrying my wife, right? But that's probably less interesting for this audience here. But I will say that in the way that it's relevant for this discussion here is that my wife is very, very good at the emotional quotient, the EQ. She's very thoughtful. She's very sensitive, and she's very good about sympathizing and understanding what the emotional reaction may be of the person who's hearing stuff come out of this mouth. Mm. And I'm not the most thoughtful or careful or sympathetic when I speak. And she's been able to provide me with really great like feedback just over the course of all the different things that come up in a marriage of different circumstances. How do you deal with family? How do you deal with decisions where you have different points of view, whether they be travel or where the kid should go to school? And I credit her for giving me that perspective of what it means to be more attuned to a type of person that needs more acknowledgement of how they feel, of how my actions can cause the other person to feel. Because from my experiences being like growing up by ourselves, we didn't have that thing. And then in my family, we don't really talk about how we feel. We don't talk about the emotional. That's too like fluffy.
Yeah.
It's too squishy, right? We're very pragmatic. Especially my dad taught me to be very pragmatic and logical. It's like, what's the problem? How do you want to go solve this? Where are you going to need to be able to solve that problem? And he's just very methodical that way.
Do you have a story in mind of where it helped you guys in your relationship, her EQ?
Yeah. For example, anytime that my wife will confide in me a lot about the interpersonal relationships that are bugging her. So whether it be like old friends or current friends, colleagues, she'll say like, this person said this to me, or this person is being difficult to work with. And my instinct when I hear that is solve the problem, solve the problem, solve the problem.
Yeah.
Right.
I have trouble not doing that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people think about that as a very practical next step.
Some people say that's guys, that guys jump.
Yes, I've heard that. I didn't want to generalize all guys.
I'll do it for you.
Yeah. But she was always, every time I get into that path, she's like, I don't need you to solve the problem right now. I just need you to listen. I need you to acknowledge how I feel about it. And when I'm ready, we can talk about problem solving. So that gave me an appreciation for like, hey, there's some people that operate that way where they need to feel like they've been heard, that their emotions have been acknowledged, and that there is a natural process by which a person can arrive at that problem solving. She knows eventually she has to solve the problem, but she just doesn't want to get there yet, right? She needs a vent. And I thought that was a very valuable lesson in my career because as a product manager, you're going through a lot of interpersonal conflict sometimes because you have different departments, different functions that have a different point of view. So a designer might have something against an engineer who says the engineer is like being unrealistic or uncooperative. They don't get it. They don't want to do what's right for the user. And the engineer is like, that designer can't come back down from their mountaintop because they keep thinking about these really great ideal experiences, but we have really concrete constraints that we have to work with. And then also as a manager, I had some people on the team that also just needed to vent and you needed to help them, coach them through.
Yeah. How do you identify when that's the case in these work scenarios? I haven't thought about that too much how do you know when it's just the person needing to vent versus I need to go help solve their problem?
I can't put my finger on it, but it's just kind of like one of those things where when you hear about a colleague who is talking about some sort of interpersonal conflict, and you can hear the amount of time and the emotional cues that they have when they're talking about the conflict, if they seem to be a little bit more agitated by the emotional aspect, it means that they need that to be acknowledged a little bit more. And so that's how I've indexed. And for the people that don't need it, I always check in and say, like, hey, thank you for sharing and confiding. You have every reason to feel that way. Would you be comfortable if we start talking about how we might want to approach this? And I think, like, in work, we can be more direct about trying to facilitate things down the road, because like at work, we always have this implicit bias towards action to try to solve the problem and keep making forward progress. Like, you can't do that in a personal relationship, right? I remember one time my wife was like, I don't need you to be a manager right now. I just need you to be my husband. Okay. So just listen, I'll tell you when we're ready to go. So
also the thing you're thanking her for is adding that to your toolkit, right? That you're saying, like, even if we can't precisely say when we apply one skill or the other, the solution versus just the listening, at least that you've improved your listening skill. Has been
listening. That's the major thing. Right. Yeah. And then, so let's talk about the third accomplishment. I consider it like the third milestone that has a lot of contribution to who I am as a person has been my kids. And the reason why I say that is about how do you teach and coach kids to learn something? And I really believe in the principle of experiential learning and learning through application. I don't want to be pedantic and say that, oh, I adopt the same ways that I teach my children to like fully grown adults. But working with my kids, or at least coaching them, has taught me to be more patient. And raising my level of patience has definitely raised my level of patience with all sorts of people, whether it be colleagues or with people that are on my direct team. And thinking about every possible opportunity to allow them to learn, recognizing that they could fail, but that's okay. Is that if they fail, they're likely to learn more effectively than learning by success, because they will just be like, oh, that was easy. So I think that was the third and final thing that I think contributes to me, which is being able to think about how to teach or / coach other people, and then actually being comfortable with a possibility of failure. Yeah. And as long as they're equipped to feel like there's a safe space to be able to do a retrospection and think about what would they do differently, I think that's kind of what we want for the next generation. And this will tie into like, hey, what we think about the ramifications of AI in the future. Like, what value do human beings have if there's AI?
Yeah, I'm getting pretty worried about it lately. That was the last thing I was going to discuss. I'm not sure we have enough time to cover it right now, but I'm not sure how many years we have left or how much future our kids will have. It's scary to think of trying to create new life in this world that could just change. I'm probably going to try to do some videos and some more talks on AI safety and on, I don't know, bring in some more expertise on that. Or I might try to write a little children's book, but that's actually for everyone. This is my latest idea. I think might be my other project, is on what is AI safety? What is alignment? Why should we be caring about this stuff? Why should we all be worried?
I think that that is definitely necessary because it's inevitable. We have to accept that the AI revolution, or the introduction of AI, is just as with any other revolution that has happened in previous eras, like agriculture, the Industrial Revolution, right? So many big disruptions that have happened, and it's always the people that are being disrupted are going to be the ones that are inherently anxious out of the uncertainty that meets. And this is the first time that a lot of knowledge workers are now like squarely facing it. The closest thing that we had before was when we thought, oh, our jobs are going to get outsourced to lower cost countries. Now, like, we're just afraid of it getting outsourced to computers, right? So it's like very much coming from the same place. We do have to figure out as a society how to just process this. And so the more that we have very clear frameworks of understanding, of really understanding, most importantly, what's constructive, what can we do about it? I think the more that we can cope and then adapt, to this new reality. So I'm glad to hear that you're thinking about putting the effort and the knowledge and the articulation to help your audience better understand it. But to me, in simple terms, the way that AI introduction, like generative media and these large language models, manifests itself is that we now have to assume that whatever knowledge already exists in the human corpus is going to be retrievable like that. So long ago, 30, 40 years ago, smart was being, how much knowledge do you know? How many facts did you know?
Yeah, like how well do you play Trivial Pursuit? Almost.
Right. That was our
game
metric for
useless knowledge.
For intelligence, right? Because it's like, how much knowledge do you retain? And then, of course, like you could say like, well, it used to be like people who were smart could do math in their head really fast. But it's like, well, why do you need to do that when you have a calculator? Right now, with the advent of the internet, everyone could be smart. They can find knowledge. And so with generative AI, it's just about like, well, with any knowledge in the corpus of human history is now available and can be synthesized into some format that's consumable. So then we got to think about what is the margin for human contribution. And I think to me, it's going to come down to creativity, about how much new knowledge, new information can you create as a human? Because AI is all about just training off an existing set of knowledge. So you can't train off of something that doesn't exist. So therefore, the value creation is going to have to be from humans.
Yeah, I saw someone come up with an interesting idea around that of the Ouroboros or the AI eating itself. Of if we have all these chatbots that are harvesting all the knowledge from the web, and right now there's a lot of incentive for people to create knowledge and to write new articles and put out new news and do that work, because you go to their website and there's ads or there's some revenue that flows to them or there's some economy that's flowing that money in.
Right.
But as we have a chatbot that just harvests it all and you never go to the website, then the money dries up to create the content. And then we don't have an AI bot that's creating the news yet.
Yeah. And
in the
so
direct sense.
that's also based off the assumption of the current web economy and the way that SEO operates. And this is not my unique idea, but if you just listen to recent conversations by Nilay Patel on the Verge cast, he talks about his hypotheses and some of the ramifications for a publisher who creates content and how this would be impacted by having Bing AI there, which today has no way of monetizing for these publishers.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of business models to get sorted out.
Yeah, it has to get rewritten. So I think the next 1 to 3 years between Microsoft, Google, the big industry titans, it's going to be fascinating to watch. There's going to be a lot of, I think, potential disruption to the way that we think about the web ecosystem of content creation. It's going to have some collateral damage along the way because this is just inevitable. So it's not going to be fun for the people that count on making a living. I'm not saying this from firsthand knowledge of anything that's happening at Google, but just like if you play out how currently the UX affordances are designed for these chatbots, it doesn't look like the way that we do web searches and the whole economy that's based off of that. So that has to be reckoned with. So I mentioned about creativity as like one of those things that we as like people can have added value, assuming generative AI is out there. Now, certainly that may not be the case all the time with like Midjourney. That's a lot of creative content, but it has to come from like human prompts to be able to produce that. So like the type of work that one does will have to get up leveled a little bit. And I am not a graphic artist, so I don't know what is like that next layer cake of added value. And then finally, I think the last bit of human added value is just about judgment. So for example, when I use Chat GPT, I try to use it for my PM workflows, and it produces the quality of like a junior PM of a draft form so that I have something that I can provide editorial judgment to turn it into something that would be more effective or more readable or reflects the thing that I want to articulate. It's a good way to try to use as a tool to take some of the most mundane aspects of your workflow out.
Yeah.
But I do wonder, for your first junior PM job that's trying to get into this, like, your output might be comparable to like a chat GPT. That's not great. So you got to figure out like how you're going to be able to like continue to add more value to it.
Yeah. Or maybe they all just will be leveled up, or there'll be less of us, or it's going to be very interesting to figure that stuff out. I know you have another meeting you got to get to, so I really appreciate your time a ton, Jeff. It's been great talking to you, and look forward to catching up again in the future.
Yeah, likewise. Good catching up with you. Thanks for giving me a opportunity to share some of my life stories and just chat about some fun things. So.
It's always amazing just what I learned about people doing any of these conversations of the stuff you don't know about their lives and the hardships people have gone through and conquered. It's really great to hear about.
Everybody's got a story, and I'm glad that you're uncovering them.
Thank you.
Tell them.
Yeah.
All right.
That's it for today. Thanks a ton for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you again next time, friends.